Okay. Welcome to our last day of the conference, to this exciting rainy day. Perfect to be here and listen to a keynote of our last guest, Professor Tomasz Mizerkiewicz. Professor Mizerkiewicz is a Polish literary scholar and professor of the humanities. He specializes in the history and theory of literature, as well as literary studies. He's a professor at the Institute of Polish Philology in the Faculty of Polish and Classical Philology at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań, where he works in the Department of 20th Century Literature, Literary Theory and Translation Studies. Since 2016-17, he has served as the Dean of this faculty, and he has then been the Vice Dean for the Student Affairs. It is thanks to him that we held this conference. He's our host, and most of all, he has been a supporter of our hypertext research, and also an enthusiasm of the hypertext as an idea that the world of text and the world in general is a network of complex relations and interesting, intriguing entanglements. Tomasz, thank you for being here.
Distinguished scholars, dear colleagues, I'm very thankful for being invited here. Thank you, Mariusz. Thank you, Ella, for this invitation. And I'm very, very grateful to have the opportunity to address a few words, to share some thoughts with you. Because this is my first opportunity to address some words to you as a dean. I am really thankful for all of you for coming to our faculty, for being here, for joining with us, for sharing your ideas, your projects with us. This is so precious. Thank you so much, and we do appreciate that. That will be productive in the coming years for all of us. What I would like to present today is, in fact, kind of the research and project that I'm involved now. What really interests me now in literary studies is the transition of these studies from fully constructivist paradigm, which dominated literary studies also in Poland, to the paradigm which is not constructivist. Sometimes it is anti-constructivism, but what is usually my view is how we should and could supplement constructivist paradigm, yes, with the new ways of thinking that add some new dimension to the previous theories and methodologies. So this is why, and this is how this trajectory of this presentation will go. I will start with presentation of coming back to the post-structuralist thinking, and then move towards today's perspective on how to read, how to understand literary relationality that we encounter, yes, while reading, while studying, while discussing literature. Of course, this is just one of the possible models, yes, to describe this, because I think that what happens within literary studies also happens in others, in other disciplines. So I will start with discussing why the studies on intertextuality became so close for the studies on hypertextuality in digital studies. Why it was so inspiring for these both disciplines. And then I will describe how do I see the transition from this intertextual paradigm to what usually appears, and what kind of perspectives for this literary relationality appears today. And that will lead me to the final questions, yes? If these new alliances among intertextuality and hypertextuality could be established and in what environment, in what condition. So to be honest, I would start with assumption that this close relation between intertextuality and hypertextuality was, to some degree, sheer coincidence. Sheer coincidence. Because digital revolution that occurred and affected most strongly in the 80s and then at the beginning of the 90s, and which was then introduced to some studies by George Landau and others, it met with some transition within literary studies from structuralism into post-structuralism. Of course, in the Anglo-Saxon context, it was from new criticism, yes, to post-structuralist thinking. First we had the situation when any text was treated in literary studies as a closed entity, yes, as a closed entity. If we had any relation of the text within this paradigm of structuralist thinking, was the relation that was connected with intention of the text, and it was commanded by the text, and the reader, the researcher, the student should follow, decipher, yes, and establish to what extent this relation reaches, right? And so it was not like open sphere, yes? It was just kind of closed system that was created by literary works. So this is what was characteristic for structuralist thinking. We had this relationality, but it was like, those like, kind of thing about autonomy of art, right? It was, of course, born with Russian formalism. So what we studied was the system of literary texts, yes? But the system was, in fact, the closed system. And what was the most important, if you want to understand the evolution of the system, you need to read its internal relations only, right? But these relations were not just open for your disposal. No, they were coded in those texts, yes? You should properly decode it, yes, to find out what the relation is, right? And these structural ideas were very important, very powerful. In Polish, for example, Polish literary studies were dominated by this way of thinking. It is like the most important Polish structuralist school, which is still being important part of the syllabus in Poland. But what occurred now in the 70s and 80s, we had these names of Julia Kristeva, the author of the term intertextuality. We had the new reading of Michal Bakhtin, his idea of dialogism in literature and culture. Then we had the post-structuralist transition by Roland Barthes, who started as a strict structuralist, yes, and then he moved and opened totally after 1968 into plaisir du texte, into pleasure of the text, and this kind of treating the relation of the liberated reader. And of course, Jacques Derrida and others, and many others. From the studies describing the reactive reader, the one who should follow the command, yes? They wanted to establish the studies of interactive reader, yes? Which meant that they did not want to treat the text as the ownership of the author, yes? The text was to be imagined as a common good of all the readers, yes? So the famous slogan, the death of the author, yes, was meaning let's liberate readers, yes? Let's make them confess what they really do with texts, yes? How they could be liberating for them, yes? How they could establish or find out, yes? Some new sphere of new relations among texts, right? and the new idea of literary relationality appeared. As Derrida stated, the text was not a product, it was the production, yes? It was the process of production, of meanings, of senses, unending, never finishing, right? So this transition from structuralist and non-structuralist thinking about the text was transitioned from the closed entity, yes, to being a part of this machinery, yes, of the text, right? You could never ever stop that, yes? This dissemination of the text meaning, of expanding, yes, of its creative relationality, yes? This is what's this new image, yes, of the text and its relationality. So then we had, of course, some idea like Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, and the idea that the text is raison, yes? So it is, it all the time connects with all the others, yes, around, yes? And it is unending, yes? This biological metaphor of raison, yes, was used to describe this unstoppable activity of the text, yes, and its unending openness. And this is in this environment where the crucial monograph by Gérard Genet, Palimpsest, 1982, appeared, where the term hypertext in intertextual studies appeared. Of course, he meant, he had a very strict definition of the hypertext. It was a part of the relation of the previous text, hypertext, and the following text, yes, that was patterned on this previous text. And this, another text was hypertext. And I think that Mariusz, he once described this, and he was right, that the term hypertext was accepted, but not the definition by Gérard Genet, because it was too strict, yes? Yeah. And then we have this moment when digital studies appeared, yes? And then we had this, fully productive intertextual studies in theory of literature, lot of terms, lots of ideas, yes? And scholars like George Landau, of course, immersed in all of that, yes? They started to read another kind of reality, and it was too tempting, yes, not to use this, yes, not to reflect on these terms. So he has chosen this hypertext as a term that could be useful for describing this, the open relation, as the term describing the situation on the web. When the reader of text is not reactive, but he's active, right? He's establishing, he's deciding, yes, which way, which links I click. Don't you worry, I'm not going to discuss the whole Landau here. But then we had lots of definitions by, of hypertextuality by Michel Rifater, Graham Allen, Vincent Miller, and many others. They were usually quite aware of the fact that there are important differences between hypertextuality and intertextuality. But I think that in the ideas all the time resonated this conviction of Landau that what was the project of Derrida, what was the project of Roland Barthes, it was quite realized, yes, in the web, yes, in the digital relations of the system, yes. So this is what they predict, right? So it was really tempting, yes, to use this rhetoric, and it was to some degree right. It was to some degree right, but of course, if we even read Allen and his monograph, at the end, he has these kind of, objections about that. He's rather enthusiastic. So you're right, Marjorie, about this, that he's rather enthusiastic about this neighborhood of intertextuality, hypertextuality. We should study them together. We should think, yes, how one model of thinking, the other model of thinking, different practices, yes, inspire us for new way of thinking and new perspectives from hypertextual perspective on literary text and from literary text into hypertext. But then at the end, he had these two objections that should be remembered. Landau said that post-structuralist thinkers, they said, and in their definition of the text was not lexia. Yes, it was not like these lexias that were used in these digital connections of texts. They studied and treated text as a very complicated communicate, yes, of the high density of high complexity, yes, and it was challenging for the reader, yes. He was not, he did not have the ability to quickly respond to this text, right? So what really liberated this interactive reader's activity, as Landau put it, in post-structuralist thinking about literary text, was the complexity, yes, and not being easy to use, right? So this is one objection by Landau. The other one, and it was the end of 90s, alter-globalist movements appeared. He said there is some conviction about basic problem about if hypertexts are really on the side of democratic tendencies. Because intertextual thinking in post-structuralist mode was connected with radical democratic tendencies, radical democratic energies, right? So it was really like a storm at the academia, yes, when it appeared, yes, because the scholars were told there is no authority of the text, yes, there is no authority to tell the reader, yes, what we should do, how he should process the text, the literary text, right? And so it was revolutionary, in fact, yes. And Landau said, but is the World Wide Web always on the side of democratic processes? It is, of course, a great discussion, right? So he made some allusion, yes, to the situation well known by the slogans of alter-globalist movements. If it is always helping people to liberate them, yes, but maybe sometimes, it is also sometimes the part of this logic where the rich get richer and poor get poorer, yes. He asked the question about accessibility of the web, accessibility of the programs, if it is open access or not, yes. And that was his final objection. Interestingly, if you would like to check some main titles, main monographs on intertextuality that appeared recently, they seem to be part of this paradigm still, because there is something that is most important, and why this relation between intertextuality and hypertextuality was so powerful. There is also one very important reason for that, and the answer is because they had in common some convictions concerning deontology, right? As you might have heard, remembered, because it was, reformulated many times, post-structural thinking, it's put to the extreme the previous conviction about any possibility of the text to refer to the real world, yes? It was already within structuralist thinking, yes? That we are just studying the systems, yes? We do not make so many statements about the referentiality of literature. But then we moved a bit further, and Derrida, as he famously said, there is no beyond text, yes? Yes? Everything that exists is textual, yes? Everything that exists is a discourse, is the product of signification, yes? Is the effect of language. And as Roland Barthes said, if you read a novel, whatever you have, you just have effect du réel, effect of reality, not reality, never ever reality itself. You should never read literature with this relationality. When you read it, scholars said, you commit referential fallacy, yes? This is the mistake, yes? We cannot make any statements about that, yes? This is why Derrida said, there is no beyond text. Il n'y a pas d'hors texte, yes? And it is very important because in literary studies, yes, it meant intertextuality was not just reference between texts, one book and the other book, yes? Because intertextuality was the reference, yes, to the all surrounding world, which was discursive, which was narrative, which was textual only, yes? It was this strong conviction that changed the game, yes? Within the thinking, within literary text. Because then if you, for example, think about the nature, then you had these monographs like Airy and McNaughton who wrote alternative natures when they said the nature, what is nature, is the effect of our discourses on them, right? This is how we narrate them. Yes, so to do something to nature is to change the way we narrate them, okay? The book is from 20 years ago. I know how strange it sounds now, yes, during environmental crisis, but it was dominating idea, right? The nature is the effect of our social constructions, right? The same could be said about individual. The individual and his identity had narrative character. What I am, yes, this is what I say about me, yes, how I constitute myself, yes, through my narrative, yes, self-fiction, yes, that I conduct. And the same could be also said about, something that we called tangible reality, yes? You should only remember this is effect of reality, yes? What we think reality is a fantasy, as psychoanalytic thinking by Zizek after Lacan was persuading, right? You might probably know where I'm intending to go. In literary studies, when this intertextuality was expanding also so with the conviction that everything is textual, this image of the literary text, of the subject, it moved toward virtual thinking, right? Virtual, yes? Because literature did not have any references to the world, yes? It was some way, of course, there is some tradition of philosophical thinking that we call solipsism, yes? But nonetheless, that was the dominating image, yes? So it also virtualized thinking about literature, about reality, about even nature, okay? So one of the reasons why this relationship between intertextual studies and hypertextual studies continued for so long was also this philosophical frame, yes? That I think, what I remember from those hypertextual studies was rather shared, yes, by these two disciplines. Now, I would briefly now relate to these last 3 monographs. If you would read them, you could think that nothing happened in the meantime, to be honest, right? Allen, he used to publish his canonical monograph every 10 years, yes? And he adds one more chapter, yes? Then he, 10 years ago, he has published the chapter on remediation, adaptation studies, last edition. And the last edition also has some something like the reference to intermediality studies and so on. Okay, but the frames, and especially when you read the end of the last edition, they are the same. Yes, he said what Kristeva said. Yes, what Bart said is still valid, and he criticized these two monographs. Jessica Mason and Intertextuality in Practice. She, apart others research, she, for example, studies how lay readers on, Goodreads and other platforms decode some intertextual relations of the read books. Yes, how they do it, how they are immersed in this interactive reality, but it is still all the time within post-structuralized thinking about intertextuality. If you'd read Scarlett Baron, The Birth of Intertextuality, what she is interested in, she traces the idea of intertextuality back to the 19th century, and she said what Charles Darwin did was the beginning of this kind of thinking because he extracted some ideas, some thoughts, some relations between species, animals, and all this natural world, yes, and converted it in the system of internal relations, yes, and she said this could be the real beginning of something that occurred then at the end as intertextual thinking, and in the end she manifests clearly and openly that radical intertextual closed system thinking is still valid, and this is what this should be most helpful. This is her attitude. This is her attitude. However, I think that there is some other story to be told. There is some other story to be told. Literary studies experienced important transitions, changes. Some of the scholars departed from this fully textual thinking. So we have also new way of treating this literary relationality. Intertextual relations are still being studied, still being part of some projects. But I would come back to this. They are part of the studies, but they are not a front. Okay? In the previous thinking, they were the first thing you should to study. Yes, the first thing you should to trace. Now, first is the new thinking about how texts, if they are texts, if literature is just texts, if they are not, again, works of art, if they are not, for example, something to be heard, yes, audible creations, yes, or algorithm and so on, because there could be open discussion, yes, what is literature, yes, what this consists of, yes, and this is being part of new thinking of relationality, important for literature. And I'll discuss 3 examples. This is first example, and I like this photo of Rita Felsky because it was made here when she was here 2 years ago promoting her book. So I have chosen this deliberately. The first example would be post-critical thinking and how post-critical thinking was using Bruno Latour's actor network theory. This is just one example, of course. And what's important for Rita Felski, she says that what constitutes circulations of literary texts is this bigger network of actors. What makes literary texts circulate, yes, is not just the inner relations. What makes them circulate is the engaged students, scholars, are some institutions, some buildings where they come and discuss, chairs where they sit, and so on and so on. So in a manner typical for Bruno Latour thinking, yes, she said, to understand how it circulates, we should see the agency that co-creates the effect of literature, okay? Co-creates, yes? The literature does not make influence, does not create an advance by itself out of the blue, yes? Mystically, yes? It makes with a little help from its friends, yes? With all these actors mentioned here, by the system education, by some training at schools, by some devoted librarians, by the meeting with the author, by all these kind of shared practices, but also by some, not to be trivial, yes, but also by these material helpers, yes, who surround us, yes. And this is what she proposed in The Limits of Critique, and her book Hooked, about art and attachment, was the book about how does it happen that some pieces of art, not only literature, but also music, but also cinema, how it happens that it matters to us, yes? How we are, in a group of fans of Joni Mitchell's songs, yes? How it happens, how it invades our everyday life, okay? This is what was of interest of Rita Felski, yes? And how it also enters our everyday life practices. So this was kind of sociological perspective. So literature's relationality here, yes, is not limited just to reference of text to the text. This is also the part of the attachments, as she said, that we establish with them and which they establish with them. She had a marvelous definition of the attachment. She said that we read books, when we read, but also when we listen to some favorite music, yes, because this is what she was interested in, how we are hooked, yes, by some cinema, and we have to, for example, watch the same movie again and again and so on. As the one example, she said that we are semi-detached. Of course, it refers to this building, yes, our semi-detached. Semi-detached. It means, she says, that we usually say that we control our bond, our attachment, yes, to some pieces of art, some movies, and so on. So we are, in fact, detached. And this is what also these modes of, intertextuality, post-structural thinking usually was teaching us, hermeneutic of suspicion and so on. But she said, but in fact, underneath we are also attached, yes? Because we are semi-detached. We are detached, we are distanced, yes? But we stick to it anyway, yes? Yes, we want to be part of it. We are not losing our control. We are not totally immersive. We are also immersive, yes, to use the term that, for example, typical for computer game studies. We are also immersive, yes, and this is why we need to describe this relation established by the work of art as semi-detached relation. If you would ask Rita Felski what intertextuality means here, yes, should probably answer, yes. It is important if it is a part of this game, yes, if it helps to create attachments, yes, if it is helpful. There are readers who like that, right? And they love the name of the rose by Iko, yes, because they know there is some reference for the crime stories, yes, and this is kind of joy, right? And he said, that's okay, yes, yes, if it really makes you semi-detached, sorry, with this book, yes? So this is a part of my project, yes? Another example is connected with Jane Bennett's philosophy. It's a philosopher representing new materialism. Her recent book on Walt Whitman, Influx and Efflux, could be the point of reference here. She, as a new materialist, she asked, is it okay if we really treat the piece of art and literature as totally lacking any material features? Of course, she makes, for example, reference, yes, for what we experience where you hear, yes, where you hear what is read, where you hear the poem, when you read the poem in the case of Walt Whitman, of course. And then she follows the route typical for Hans Ulrich Gumbrecht's studies on the mood, yes, because Gumbrecht was very close to her in this opinion. Gumbrecht said that when you listen to the poem, when you follow the rhythm, get immersed in that, at the end, this light physical features, yes, of the literary work create some kind of mood, some atmosphere, yes, that surrounds you, okay? So it was also important for Jane Bennett. The favorite quotation here is from the book by Morrison, when she said that when the literature makes you feel its mood, it's like it touches you from the inside. It's like it is touching you from the inside. It means that you appreciated some physical values of it, yes? They are touching you, yes? And make you being a part of its very peculiar, but to some degree, material environment. Material environment. I mean, there are some literary theories nowadays which follow something that it was like, totally excluded before, yes? One of my colleagues from Katowice, from Silesia University, he challenged the idea that, for example, that the narrator in the book, in the novel, is a fully abstract dimension of the text. He said, is it really what you experience when you read the text? He said, he gave example from the stories of Polish short writer stories, Bruno Schulz, and he said, when you have sometimes the narrator, that he wants to make impression on you, that he speaks to you, that he makes some gesture, and he say, can you see this, right? You should a bit change your thinking about literary text, because maybe literary text is not abstract reality, deprived of any material features. Maybe the more discrete and more dramatic and more interesting process is here. Maybe what we are involved when reading such a short story by Bruno Schulz is the dramatic change, when sometimes the narrator seems to be a bit real, but then he is immaterial completely, it disappears, okay? So we have this constant interplay of materiality and dematerialization of the narrator, okay? So this is sometimes today, in the theories of literature, the part of the game that is very close to Jane Bennett. And Jane Bennett, what she even did in her monograph, I didn't mention before, because before we had intertextual studies in literature, before we had full paradigm of the studies on influence. What influenced the author? What influenced the text, right? And then it was, I remember this from my studies in Krakow, it was totally prohibited. You should never use the word influence, yes? Because this is old school of thinking. It was typical for interwar thinking in Poland. There are some texts by Borowy and other about influence. We no longer say, anything about influence, yes? Because this is something you cannot prove, yes? You cannot make any statement on that. But what proposes Jane Bennett, she says that every piece of art is the result of influences. Even, she says, of influences of what is material, environment of the author. She had very interesting definition of the individual. She said, we maybe should depart from individual and think about dividual subject. She borrows it from Indian philosophy. She said, what is more convincing for her is that we are individual, that we are opened, yes? We are opened, and these substances, yes? And these moods also influence us, not only ideas that we have. And we, following her monograph, we come back to the idea about influence. So we supplement intertextual thinking with new way of thinking about influences, yes? Building text and the relations, of course, with the material world, according to Jane Bennett. I need to speed a bit because Mariusz controls me, so maybe I will leave this critical one example because I need to discuss at least this one example. What has really powerful meaning for today's literary studies is eco-critical paradigm, yes? Which means that when you read the literature, you can no longer ignore its relations to, for example, Anthropocene. Yes, when you read the books from the last 200 years. We had a conference, there was a conference, for example, on Joseph Conrad in May in Paris. And the main context for reading Joseph Conrad now is ideology of extractivism, yes? Because all of his novels, all of his stories, were written at a time when there was, extraction of all the materials, collecting all the goods all around the world, yes? By colonial powers, yes? Using them, processing them, burning them, yes? Producing too much energy and so on, and polluting and making the effect of Anthropocene, right? This is how literary studies are being framed, shaped today, yes? That we do not ignore, yes? The relation to these eco-critical realities. There are lots of examples, but what has really happened to literary studies under influence of criticism is like, you may probably know the movie Don't Look Up. There is a movie which is like a metaphor, yes, what happened to literary studies, yes, because Don't Look Up shows our culture that ignores the possibility of the real impact of the natural world, yes, on our world, yes. There are a group of denials. They say, no, the meteor will never fall. This is false, yes. There are groups who think, how could I earn more money on that? Yes, there's this billionaire who is, of course, patterned on someone, and so on, yes. And the end it hits, which means it is metaphorical meaning, yes. We are no longer in a human bubble, yes? And literary studies are no longer in this bubble. They are thinking about how literary texts relate to the situation. When you read Timothy Morton books like Dark Ecology, yes? He always says, yes? We are living in a world which is dense with the pollution. Everyone is guilty. It is inevitable, yes? You should completely, yes, and permanently think with the relation to this to this context. I call here at the end this marvelous book by Anna Lowenham, Seeing the Mushroom at the End of the World. And I really recommend it because this is really thought-provoking, because it is asking us how we should re-establish our new forms of living, also academic forms of living, when we live in a capitalist ruins. Yes? What she does in this book, she goes to the landscapes totally ruined by extensive excavation, deforestation, yes, and she follows and asks the question, how there is any possibility them to recover. And the main answer is, we are unable to recover them themselves. What recovers them are, to some degree, unpredictable environmental processes. Some of them triggered by a very special species of mushroom, yes? If they will not appear, the landscape is not recovered. But you cannot, put seeds of it, anything, yes? You just have to wait and expect and hope, respecting the agency, okay? And this is again this meteor, yes, that punctuates us within literary studies and makes us relate every literary text also to the environmental issues. I'm finished. And so if I would say at the end, this is how I see the transition of intertextual thinking in literary studies. We did not drop it. We still teach it, yes? But we ask other questions concerning intertextuality. Intertextuality is important, but it is only part of broader relationality of literary text, of literature that we trace today, yes? Be it social reality, but defined in actor-nectar theory, be it new materialistic thinking, be it ecological thinking, and others. I am not an expert on hypertextual studies, but I think if we could look for some alliances between two spheres, there are alliances that could be drawn from, maybe there is also the same trajectory that you see in your studies, yes, about hypertextuality. Is it just limited to the sphere, virtual sphere, interrelations between text that we produce in the net, or do we just see it also as a part of this broader context, not only virtual, yes? And what we do, sorry for the very banal thing, but the banal example that maybe you have 10 times discussed. What we do, yes, about this example, that would not act. My mobile would not act. The server that I use here, joining the cloud, would not act if we did not excavate cobalt in the cobalt mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, so we are always part of this extracting mechanisms of our world. Yes, even we don't want to think. Yes. The meteor, yes, is approaching the same, yes, this sphere of studies. So this is why I need to end my presentation with these questions and with, I think, preconditions, yes, for new alliances that we may build, yes, between these two spheres, if the trajectories, yes, meet sometimes. Getting close, inspire, and help each other. What I could deliver as a non-hypertextual scholar, yes, is to tell you how much I could effort, how clearly I could effort, yes, how this transition from intertextual thinking into relational thinking of literature happened within our field. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mizerkiewicz, for these important contexts that we all live in. Questions? Richard.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how excited I am by this talk. I want to make sure that Deleuze and Guattari are not roped into the post-structural phase, because I think Jane Bennett comes out of the later understanding of Deleuze and Guattari. So, but when you mentioned the new critical approach as a closed, considering the text as a closed system, and suggested post-structuralism opens that system, it made me think of thermodynamics, and it made me think of Deleuze and Guattari. So all this to ask, how can considering texts as open systems from a thermodynamic point of view, is that anything you have considered or are working on or see potential in?
From a dynamic point of view, like the physical thermodynamics, yes, this is your point. Yeah, to be honest, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. I remember the moment when I had to read some short story by Polish author, and what he clearly stated is, what I do, I diffuse, yes? This kind of sharing energy, yes? What is all about, all around. My writing is diffusion, okay? And this is very close to this way of thinking, yes? About opening the text, but not abstracting it, but still, keeping it some of this material, yes, its material features. And the funny thing is that once you, for example, make such a statement, I wrote this interpretation and I said, we have to go this way, yes, about diffusional thinking, about literature. And then I found it in Jane Bennett. I was so sorry about it because, I have published it, but it was in Polish. No one reads Polish, yes? Everyone is quoting Bennett, not me. But thank you for this remark. I think it is inevitable. It is inevitable to borrow some terms from thermodynamics, from the physical sciences, and it is oncoming. I am sure of that.
That was the question from the writer, and now from the programmer, Klaus.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate also your talk. The first thing I wanted to make is a statement or a question. You mentioned at one point, with respect to hypertext, readers decide which links to click, and then you continued discussing intertextuality. I think it's interesting to notice that the clicking of a link is some action by the reader which is on purpose. So the reader decides, I click this link or no. Whereas reading a text which has so many different implicit connections to other texts or within the same text, is something the reader actually can decide to think about, to create this association. For example, if I say, do not think about a pink elephant, everyone is thinking about a pink elephant, even though in fact, you cannot decide not to think about a pink elephant if this word has been mentioned. So I believe this is something interesting to think and to reflect upon the technology which lets you intentionally, follow a connection, whereas, the thinking which would not let you decide whether you want to think about something or not. So the question I have is, there are actually two questions which kind of relate to each other. You said the reader reflects upon text, and there are so many connections and references, even meetings with authors and talks and everything around that. So do you think that we need a mechanism, and I'm thinking about hypertext, we need a mechanism for readers to connect information, to connect ideas and information explicitly? So when I read a book, for example, there's no way for me actually to write an explicit connection between one thought mentioned in the book and another thought mentioned in the book. So do you think we need mechanisms like that which allow us to do this easily? which, by the way, is also not possible on the web, because if I do not have write access on a web page, I cannot add a link. And if I could, it would be too complex to difficult. And the second thing is, referring to Lando, you mentioned that text is not easy to use. Do you think that machines, AI, that could summarize text, would make it better or would make it worse, also because with the thought that they could change the intertextual connections, they could put text into a completely different context, completely different connections. So is it a benefit or is it a danger?
Yeah, thank you. Very challenging questions. But the first step is a reference to your initial comment. I mean, in these post-structural theories, they say that, yeah, if you think about something that is a bit outside the text, yes, it is what you always do while reading, yes. So we need to put it, yes, in our field, yes. So there is this overproductivity, yes, of references that we make during reading. There is some quotation from an American writer who said, whenever I read fantastic book, there are those moments when I stop reading, yes, I raise my head, yes, and then, wow, it is buzzing, yes, everything happens because it is too much. Part of my reading, yes, is this huge, overproductive, yes, references that I make, yes. Some theories of reading, like Michel de Certeau, they said that we always make illegal links, yes, while reading, yes. So this is how these theories, how it was theorized. I'm not really sure if I understand the first question properly, but you asked if when we read the book we find some reference, yes, to the next text, yes, and what was your question about this situation?
Yes, when you read a text, you have associations to other texts or maybe to other parts of the book, but you do not have means to express that, right? So imagine that to study on the digital side, imagine that you read a PDF and you have another PDF and you think those are kind of related. You do not have the means to create a link which you could follow up. Do you think this is an issue?
Yeah, but okay. And yes, I think, I mean, the first thing, it happens, yes, that we have, I mean, we meet these links, we have these references, and to be honest, what all these digital tools provide us with, yes, they help us, yes, to list them, yes, to find them, yes, to follow them. Yes, this is. I mean, my presentation was not the presentation like let's drop hypertextuality and live in the forest. Yes, it is not like that. Yes, it was like let's join them, let's join forces. Yes, in this new situation and this new landscape, and this is one of the examples. It is so helpful many times when you do scholarly work on literature. Yes, when you find these links, and this is so helpful because before that you couldn't just tape the word and find this immediately. You have to skip the whole book. Yes, and I think it is really important. I think it is quite part of this post-structural activity, yes, in intertextual context. Yeah, it is very, very challenging, the question about AI and then the complexity of the text. I was referring to some argument by by Allen, expressed at the end of the 90s, before today's AI appeared, so it was his conviction of the time. I'm fully aware that we are now in a different situation. Yes, I was also challenged by some texts produced by AI. Yes, and they were really, really complex, really challenging, and it should be theorized anew now. Yes, this is my conviction.
Alessio?
I'll try to take on your question about engaging and finding an alliance. Okay? But I want to start from maybe a gap I noticed in your fantastic overview of the last decades. Is in particular about the enactment, the point of this relation between the author and the reader, and in leaving room for the reader to bring to life the work. Was Eco, Gary, or other scholars' perspective on that, which I think is closer to what as a community Hypertext kind of does. And I follow you with your questions about we're actually doing the similar work, but I think we have to understand which kind of work it is. In some regards, we are more concerned not understanding what's going on, but trying to bring to life a vision about the future, because we have multiple futures ahead. Okay, we have to decide. So it's looking to this field as a way to society to realize, as we are part of society, as technologists, that's what we have to do, and we know we hold this responsibility with the decisions we make. But again, looking to all this long story about re-understanding reading and how important it is maybe the incompatibility is understanding what you are doing, what is your role, or the scholars in the year, which in my understanding is more about shaping a vision rather than discovering how they read out visions. Actually, it was like not look up, look down. It was changing more than bringing to life something was going on. It was so influential that maybe pointing out something was already, it was actually not much new. Reformulating some ideas, but so impactful that is akin to designing the future rather than talking about society today. And in this perspective, with the responsibility that looking to and pointing toward a specific point of view is changing society, that we can work together. Because we bring visions.
Yes.
And I think you create the visions that come in forward. But this is the thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was thinking that the previous question was the cruelest one I could get, but this one is even more demanding. I mean, I am quite close to your thinking, to be honest, because when the whole story started, it started with the conclusion that there is, if whatever we could say, how much revolutionary post-structuralism would not be, yes, there was some sense that it is also the part of ivory tower of academia, and it is very professionalized, very distanced from the lay leaders, lay audiences, experiences, and this is how Rita Felsky changed her thinking and the way she was treating literature. She wanted to be closer to the practices, yes, that from practical solutions where literature is sometimes helpful for people. Yes, it is not, like during Romantic time. Yes, that I read a poem and my life depends on that. No, nothing pathetic like this. But she said, but there are some cases where people say, the peculiar book helped me. The peculiar movie, yes, was with me in the moment of the crisis of depression, and she wanted to follow these confessions and to understand, yes, how it acts, yes, how it acts, and how it is part of everyday people's lives, yes. So as we could also just look down. This is exactly her intention. So this is how I think we should read her. Yes. So this is very close to practices. Yeah.
Thank you, Dini.
Thank you for your talk. I was really interested in your comment about your discussion of Bard, and I was thinking about this is what happens when you're in a conference, right? You hear something and it triggers an idea. But I've been following Kate Pels's work for the longest time. Her influential approach to text is the media-specific analysis, right? Is to look at the text using your sensory modalities. And that was a groundbreaking concept back in 2002. It's one we're still using today in my program and other places in the electronic literature. What was interesting is that I see a connection between Bard's pleasure of text and that concept, the idea of opening up the text to the body, like embodiment and enjoyment, excitement, which is something that didn't happen in a lot of other theoretical frameworks of the period, right? And thereafter, right? We're not supposed to enjoy the text, we're supposed to read the text, analyze it. And so I think there's an interesting thing to think about is that there's a 15-year time period between Bart's, work and Kate's writing machines, which came out in 2002. But what's fascinating about that is that she does no cite count in that particular work. She cites a lot of other of his works, but not that particular one. So this is just an observation. I'm going to contact her now and ask her directly, did that text play any role in the development of her theory? Because it's not there. And believe me, I know her work really well.
But in the work of Bennett?
Say
again? In whose work?
Kate Hells, in Catherine Hells.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's really important in the field for electronic literature, especially hypertext.
Okay. But I need to read it first because I don't know the book, yes, so I cannot refer to it.
Yeah, the work that preceded Writing Machines was print as flat, code as deep. And that kind of opens up the idea that there's something happening that's different with electronic text and paper text. Yeah.
I am very, very thankful for you because I will read this and find out, yes, about this possible.
Well, I was thanking you for making me want to ask her that question. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just a quick thing. Her earlier work is she has a master's in chemistry, and she was talking about chaos theory back in the late 80s. So there's another connection to science.
Marvelous. So this is very close to what I presented here then. Okay, great.
Yeah, she looks at everything through a microscope. I mean, literally, the science in her literature is phenomenal.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And I believe last question, or maybe second from the last, Joachim.
Thank you for an interesting talk. When you mentioned the death of the author and each text becoming a process of production instead of a finished product, it made me think of a concept of participatory culture introduced by Henry Jenkins in the late 90s. He is also very known for his research on digital games and social communities. So it functions as in opposition to consumer culture, where in a society based upon participatory culture, everyone would be able to create anything they have an idea for without technical knowledge or like high expenses. So it makes me wonder if it's possible to achieve this state under capitalism, because it's often it's not profitable for companies to allow ordinary funds to use their IPs, use their franchises to create something of their own, because it creates a risk of letting them do something free of charge that they would get profit out of. So, do you think it is realistic that we would live in a participatory culture society under current circumstances?
Yeah, you guys, you asked me such a fundamental question. But this is very thankful because it means that we really discuss some crucial matters. I mean, of course, I know what you say. For example, when my kids, they create some games on Roblox, yes, and share it with the others. I know that they do not earn. There is someone else who earns the money here, yes, and this is very, very difficult. I mean, this is how to avoid it. I mean, for me, very convincing is one of the last theories of computer games experiences by Roman Kubicki in Poland, because he, and just it was some illusion during my talk, because he said that we should supplement analysis of the experience of immersion in the computer game world with something that was not previously so much commented on, the moment of immersion, yes, the moment when someone raises his head and occurs that he could be reflective, yes, within that. As everyone who plays computer games, and I am not such a big gamer, but it is not that they are just consumers. It is not that they are just consumers. They are really sometimes very critical thinkers. They also look for ways, yes, to cheat the system, yes, and there is some hope in this moment of immersion, yes, that they experience, yes. So this is also some reflexive potential in Adorno's terms, yes, that is here to be employed, and but there is no one answer for your question. We need to be inventive as much as possible and be communal as much as possible, yes, and to build communities, yes, who try to do that. But I fully agree. This is tricky and very difficult game.
True. One example that comes to my mind is modding communities, because there are like two opposite approaches, like game developers take. For instance, you have Bethesda Studios, which basically employs modders to do their work at a cheap cost, as in Creation Club from 2017, when they basically let modders do their own work for lower price. But we also have Rockstar Games and Take-Two, which are notoriously sending cease and desist letters to every modder who creates something that could compete with GTA Online, for instance. So there is no middle ground. There is either exploitation or like cancellation, like vaporization of all fun mods in gaming community, which is kind of disturbing to me as a gamer. Yes.
There is also some kind of bitterness that we share in this having no way out sometimes, or thinking that we need to find some way out, and a revolt, yes? Some bitterness that you experience at the end of the film on Spotify. If you have seen the series on Spotify, it is so depressing, yes? How it ended, yes? When you refer it to how it started, yes? This collapse, yes, of these hopes, yes, that could be liberative for the music, for the sharing music among communities, and how it turned into this huge corporation, ruthless one, and so on and so on. So this bitterness makes you disagree, yes, but then we have to do something with this feeling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our host, Dean Tomasz Mizerkiewicz, gave us a necessary framework for our work for the next conferences. Let's connect, let's do illegal links, let's start looking down and start building something with connection to everything else. Thank you.
Thank you.